Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time when shoes were optional, mornings were cold, and survival was a full-time job. You're a medieval peasant now. Welcome to the 14th century. You don't have electricity, running water, or even toilet paper. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. But don't worry, we'll take it slow. And if the rats nibble on your toes, just tell them it's a sleepover. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun rises. The rooster hasn't even decided whether it's worth crowing. You're curled on a lumpy straw mattress that squeaks like an old door with every breath you take. Cold mist seeps in through cracks in the wooden slats that try, bless them, to pass as walls. Your breath fogs in front of your face, and somewhere nearby, a pig snorts in its sleep. Not outside, by the way, inside. You share your one-room hut with your animals, not for company. Though hey, some of them are more interesting than your cousin. But because their body heat helps warm the room. You slide your feet to the floor and crunch into something that may be straw or may be last night's turnip. Either way, no time to complain. The day begins now. Before breakfast, there's work to be done. Your village follows the sun, and right now, the sun says, move. You pull on your only tunic, which smells like 5 generations of wood smoke and regret. The sleeves are stiff with last week's sweat, and the fabric itches like medieval fashion's version of penance. Over your shoulder goes the tool you carved yourself, a hoe made from old wood and hope, and you trudge out into the cold. Your first job? Tending to the strip of land the Lord was gracious enough to let your family work on. You don't own it, of course. You just keep it alive. The soil is stubborn and full of stones that seem to reproduce when you're not looking. You dig, plant, weed, and beg the clouds to do their part. Your hands blister quickly, but you've stopped noticing. Calluses cover them like bark now. Once, your younger brother tried to eat one, thinking it was bread crust. That was a weird day. While you work, you listen to the birds, to the creaking trees, to the distant coughing of your neighbor, old Bartram. He always coughs. Nobody knows why. Some say he swallowed a fly and it never left. Your daily chores are wrapped around survival, like vines on an old fence. Predictable, unrelenting, and mildly annoying. First, you tend the fields. Then you fetch water from a stream half a mile away, carrying 2 wooden buckets that weigh more with each step. You try not to spill too much, because every drop means less time returning. You try not to fall in either. That happened to your uncle once. He still smells like moss. Around midday, you break for your first real bite, assuming there's food today. Bread, hard as a rock and twice as dry, paired with some weak ale that's safer than the water. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring it, but because it takes genuine effort to get it down. Once, you chipped a tooth on a crust and swore vengeance. Still haven't figured out how to get revenge on baked goods. Afternoons are for tending to the animals. You milk the cow, who hates you. You feed the pigs, who adore you, but only because you drop food. The chickens? They eye you with suspicion, as if they know something you don't. There's also the matter of dung. So much dung. From cows, pigs, goats, even geese, if they're feeling creative. You shovel it, pile it, and pretend it's not the cornerstone of your entire life. Funny how the smell never really leaves your nose, even when you go to bed. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were used to it or just quietly miserable about it forever. Occasionally, there's a surprise. A traveling merchant might pass through, his cart full of trinkets, strange foods, and stories you half believe. He once sold a magic stone to your cousin, claiming it could cure bad luck. The only thing it cured was your cousin's money. Quieter days are interrupted by odd events. A cow gives birth early, the thatch on the roof collapses again, or your neighbor yells about seeing the ghost of the blacksmith's wife. You all nod solemnly, then laugh about it later over soup. Speaking of soup, dinner is whatever was left from breakfast, plus a few wild herbs you found on the walk home. Nettles, maybe, or possibly weeds. You've developed a taste for bitterness. Adds character, you say. As the sun sets, your body aches in places you didn't even know could ache. Knees, back, even your eyebrows for some reason. You gather around the hearth with your family. No fire tonight. Wood is too precious. But the embers still give a hint of warmth. You listen as your grandfather tells a story you've heard 100 times. How he once met a knight, helped him fix a saddle, and was rewarded with a coin and a smile. You nod. It's a good story. Plus, it distracts you from the roof, dripping on your shoulder. You sleep on straw again. No pillow, no blankets, unless someone hasn't used them as a curtain. You huddle for warmth and hope the night passes quietly. Sometimes it does. Sometimes the wind howls and something scratches at the wall. Is it a raccoon? Is it Bartram again? You don't ask. You just pull the straw over your head and pretend you're in a castle made of silence. The thatched roof groans above you like it's reconsidering its job. Morning hasn't broken yet, but rain has. Again. The soft, consistent drip, drip, drip echoes into your ear like a passive-aggressive lullaby. You pull your tunic over your face in protest, but the dampness finds you anyway. Welcome to your home. Hand-built, half-decayed, and entirely drafty. The walls are woven wattle, plastered with daub made from mud, straw, and animal dung. In summer, it bakes and cracks. In winter, it weeps with frost. And always, always, the roof leaks. The thatch above you is meant to keep out rain, but really, it just delays it. Water seeps in through patches the chickens have picked at. Yes, those same chickens you share your home with. They live in the corners, scratching and clucking like feathered roommates who refuse to pay rent. As you sit up, you thump your head on a low beam. Again. That's the 4th time this week. And it's only Wednesday. Probably. Time is slippery when every day feels like a slightly wetter copy of the last. Your nose wrinkles as you breathe in the signature aroma of medieval life. Damp straw, wood smoke, sweat, and something vaguely fungal. You know it's not romantic, but it's home. The kind of home where warmth is less a condition and more of a memory. Still, it's not all doom and mildew. This house, if you squint and ignore the spiders, is a fortress of sorts. It stood through storms, births, deaths, and at least one mysterious incident involving old Bartram and a very upset goat. The hearth in the center of the room, though constantly smoking due to the lack of a chimney, offers comfort. You all learned long ago not to mind the way the smoke hangs just at head height like a judgmental ghost. The floor beneath your feet is packed dirt, swept daily, though you wouldn't know it. On special days, you sprinkle fresh herbs on it, sweet woodruff or dried mint, hoping to mask the smell. Fringe fact here, some households mixed crushed oyster shells into the dirt floor, believing it kept fleas away. Did it work? Not really, but it gave them something to do between plagues. Speaking of plagues, your house is only somewhat private. Everyone sees everything. The kids sleep on one side, your parents on the other, and your cousin Thomas keeps insisting the middle of the room is his space, as if claiming floorboards has ever meant anything. Sometimes, a small curtain hangs between sleeping areas, usually a tattered linen sheet that billows dramatically whenever someone walks by, which is never not funny. You've been tempted to make shadow puppets behind it just to liven things up. Now, about the rats. Yes, you have them. So does everyone else. They skitter in the walls, play tag near the hearth, and occasionally make eye contact like they're daring you to react. You name the boldest ones. There's Snip, the tailless wonder. Goblet, who once stole a piece of cheese right from your hand. And Clarence, who may or may not be immortal. Despite the cohabitation situation, family, chickens, rats, and all, there's a kind of rhythm here. Life moves in loops. You mend what breaks. You curse the rain, and you pray the roof holds through one more winter. You even get used to the thin trickle of water that trails down the walls like a slow, disapproving tear. You try patching it, of course. Everyone does. But unless you've got fresh bundles of straw and a ladder that doesn't betray you, the odds are against you. And good luck convincing the Lord to help. He's too busy in his stone manor, where roofs don't leak and floors are made of actual wood. Historians still argue whether medieval lords even understood how peasants lived, or if they genuinely believed everyone enjoyed being damp and underfed. When it's truly unbearable, the community bands together. A few families will help each other replace a roof section, swapping labor like currency. You climb the rickety ladder, pray for balance, and wedge fresh straw into place, tightly as your freezing fingers allow. It's itchy, awkward, and takes forever. But it's better than sleeping under stars you didn't ask for. Inside, the furniture is, well, creative. A three-legged stool that leans more than it sits. A table made from an old door. Your family's prized possession is a chest where you keep your 2 spoons, one iron pot, and the extra tunic with slightly fewer holes. Luxury? Oh, and let's not forget your candles, made from tallow, which is just a fancy way of saying rendered animal fat. They smoke, they stink, and they drip like slow, waxy tears. But they beat darkness. Barely. Occasionally, the village carpenter swings by and offers to fix something in exchange for bread, ale, or a favor involving his sheep. You accept, knowing full well his repairs will hold for a month, maybe 2, before the chair legs collapse during dinner and send Uncle Fergus flailing. Outside your door, puddles form from the constant drizzle. You step through one each time you leave, and honestly, it's less like mud and more like soup now. You gave up on dry socks a long time ago. But here's the thing. Despite the wetness, the cold, and the occasional surprise goose in your bed, your home matters. It's where stories are told, meals are shared, and songs are hummed softly in the dim glow of a low fire. It's where you laugh when someone farts during prayer, where you whisper gossip about the Lord's niece who definitely kissed a tanner's apprentice. And yes, it leaks. Yes, it's loud in the rain and loud in the quiet, but it's yours, sort of. And for now, that's enough. You're hungry again. Not the kind of hungry that makes you cranky and sends you rummaging through the pantry for snacks, because, well, there is no pantry, and snacks haven't been invented yet. You're medieval hungry. The slow, constant ache of an empty belly that doesn't expect to be full anytime soon. Breakfast wasn't much. Maybe a crust of stale rye and a sip of ale. But now it's mid-morning, and you need something more substantial if you're going to survive another round of weeding, mending, and yelling at the goat. So, you check the food stores. The family's prized ceramic pot holds the last bit of pottage, an ongoing stew of vegetables, herbs, and mystery ingredients that's been simmering and refilled for days, sometimes weeks. You ladle out a portion and note the new guest floating near the top. You think it's a leaf. You hope it's a leaf. The bread sits nearby, hard enough to double as a defensive weapon. It's made of coarse grains, rye, barley, sometimes wheat if it's been a good season. But you remember last year's harvest was grim, and the miller's been known to cut the flour with chalk. Yes, chalk. Makes the bread look whiter, he says. Makes your teeth fall out faster, more like. You chew anyway, slowly, rhythmically. A piece cracks off and grazes your gum. But hey, pain is just another medieval seasoning. Dinner later will be more of the same. Bread, pottage, and maybe a turnip. A lonely, lumpy turnip, the medieval vegetable MVP. You've had it boiled, mashed, roasted, fermented, and once, inexplicably, pickled in vinegar and tears. One winter, your uncle carved a face into a particularly stubborn one and declared it Turnip Jack. That night, everyone took turns telling it their secrets. There may have been ale involved. Speaking of which, your liquid intake is mostly weak ale or watered-down cider. Clean drinking water is hard to come by. The village stream runs suspiciously close to where people relieve themselves. So, fermentation is your safety net. You'd be amazed how early children learn to drink ale around here. Toddlers wobble around giggling with mugs almost as big as their heads. Hydration, medieval style. Sometimes, though, you get lucky. A neighbor traps a rabbit. A relative trades for a bit of cheese. A festival brings roasted goose or honey cakes. You treasure those days. You dream about them on the others. Now, on to gruel. It's everything the name suggests, and less. Made from oats or millet, cooked until it gives up hope. You eat it for breakfast, lunch, and, if the gods are smiling, dinner. Cold gruel, warm gruel, gritty, bland, occasionally lumpy gruel. You once found a tiny stone in yours and convinced yourself it was a sign of good luck. You needed the morale boost. You sometimes forage, too. Nettles, dandelions, mushrooms. Carefully, because one wrong mushroom and you're on a one-way trip to ghosthood. Old Bartram once ate the wrong kind and spent 3 days screaming at birds. Then again, he screams at birds most days. Quirky fact: some peasants believe certain plants could protect you from hunger if worn under your tunic. Spoiler, they didn't. But carrying a wild garlic bulb in your boot made you smell like someone worth avoiding, so maybe that was the point. During times of famine, those years when the crops fail or the Lord gets greedy, you survive on whatever's left. Tree bark, acorns, even boiled shoe leather. You joke about it now, but that one spring, the village dog population got real quiet, real fast. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants ate better than we think, or were in a constant state of near starvation. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, nourished enough to work, never quite enough to thrive. Feasts do happen, though. Weddings, holy days, harvest festivals. Then you might enjoy fresh bread, mead, stewed fruits. meat if you're especially lucky. You dance, you drink, you pretend life doesn't usually taste like boiled sadness. Someone brings out a drum, someone else starts juggling turnips. It's beautiful chaos, and for a brief moment, you're full, not just in the stomach, but in the soul. But feasts are rare. Most days, it's the same dull rotation. Your dreams start to feature imaginary foods, crisp apples, roasted meat, something called pizza you swear the priest mentioned in a vision. He was drunk, but still. You watch the skies a lot, praying for rain when it's dry, sun when it's wet, and a miracle when it's both. Because your next meal depends on the next harvest, and that harvest depends on a sky that couldn't care less about your pottage. Your cousin once tried planting exotic beans he traded from a traveler. Nothing grew, but now he claims he invented bean futures. He still owes you 3 eggs. Yet through all the blandness and improvisation, you adapt. You share when you can, trade when it matters, and joke when nothing else helps. A bad stew becomes a family legend. A too salty gruel gets rebranded as sea porridge. You laugh because, frankly, what else are you going to do? Food is fuel, ritual, identity. Even in scarcity, it brings people together. Around the hearth, bowls in hand, you sit elbow to elbow and share what little you have. No one's going back for seconds, but no one's eating alone either. And tonight, as you scrape the bottom of the pot, you wonder if tomorrow will bring better fare or just another chewy turnip with judgmental eyes. Either way, you'll eat it, because in this life, survival is the best spice. You wipe your hands on your tunic, more out of habit than effectiveness, and step into the open air. Time to work? Again, it's always time to work. You don't have a shift. You have a life sentence, and the parole board is the weather. Out here in the open field, you stand beneath a sky so vast it might swallow you whole. It's a blue-gray stretch of moodiness, with clouds that look like they're brooding over something you said. The air smells of earth, manure, and that strange mix of morning dew and yesterday's sweat. You're working the land, of course. That's what most peasants do. You're not a merchant or a monk or one of those fancy people who wear shoes just because. You're a laborer, a toiler, a world-class weed puller, the kind of person who knows exactly how many blisters fit on one hand. Today's job? Clearing rocks from the barley plot. Again, you swear they multiply overnight. Some scholars have actually suggested medieval people believed stones grew in the soil like an unwanted crop. Were they wrong? Not completely. You're pretty sure you recognize this one. Yep, the one shaped like a turnip. You've named him Rockwell. But this field isn't even yours. It belongs to the Lord. So do the oats you harvest, the pigs you raise, and the air you breathe. Though he hasn't figured out how to tax that yet, you're a serf, tied to the land. And not in a poetic, I belong to the earth way. More like, if you try to leave, you'll be hunted down and dragged back kind of way. You owe the Lord a portion of your labor, known as corvée. Basically, he gets the best of your time, and you get the best of his indifference. You work his land for free a few days a week, then scramble to tend your own tiny strip of soil before darkness eats the day. It's not just you. Everyone's out here. Your neighbor Elsa is knee-deep in muck, swatting at flies and muttering curses under her breath. Her kids are off scaring birds away from the grain, armed with clappers and an uncanny ability to fall over. Even the old folks do their part, picking herbs or tending goats with hands that never stop moving. Still, there's a rhythm to this chaos. The tools are simple: wooden plows, hand hoes, and your trusty calloused palms, but you know how to wield them like an artist. Your back may ache and your knees may groan, but there's a weird pride in straight furrows and weed-free rows. Quirky aside, you once tried to speed things up by tying a hoe to the back of a goat. That ended with 2 smashed cabbages, 1 terrified goat, and a village tale that refuses to die. Midday comes with little ceremony. You rest under a tree, if you're lucky enough to be near one, and pull out your meal. A chunk of hard bread, maybe a sliver of cheese. You chew, you sip, and you stare at the horizon like it's got answers. Sometimes, a traveling friar or merchant stops by and brings gossip from other villages. Word of rebellion, miracles, strange beasts, or a peasant who claimed to have seen a glowing woman in the woods. You listen, eyes wide, pretending it's not just another distraction from sore muscles and empty pockets. Historians still argue whether the average peasant truly worked more than modern people. Some say medieval folks had more holidays, especially religious ones. Others claim that between dawn chores, evening repair work, and feast day obligations, you rarely sat still unless you were dead, or pretending to be. You think the truth lives somewhere in the dirt under your fingernails. Your own small patch of land, if you're lucky enough to have one, isn't exactly fertile paradise. The soil's stubborn, the season's unpredictable, and there's always something trying to eat your crops before you can. Deer, birds, worms, weather. Once, inexplicably, frogs. It's like nature's got a grudge. But every sprouting bean feels like a triumph. Every cabbage that doesn't rot on the stalk, a miracle. You talk to your plants sometimes. Praise the good ones. Gently threaten the lazy ones. You once sang to a potato for a week, just to see what would happen. It didn't grow faster, but it did look happier. And let's not forget communal labor days. Everyone gathers to build a fence, dig a ditch, or repair the village path. It's tiring, muddy, and someone always ends up in the stream. But it's also social time. Jokes are cracked, songs are hummed, and occasionally love stories bloom between 2 peasants trying not to drop a log on each other. Of course, there's also the weather. The ultimate manager. Too much rain. Crops drown. Too little. Crops die. An early frost. You're toast. You learn to read the sky, like scripture. A sudden chill in the wind means trouble. A red sunrise means your day just got 12% worse. And those cloud formations? They're not just clouds. They're threats. And even if your field survives, there's always the chance the Lord increases his share. He decides he wants more oats, or that your neighbor's pig is now his pig, or that he's imposing a new tax on anyone with more than 4 teeth. You'd laugh if it didn't hurt so much. Still, you work. Because there's nothing else to do. Because your family needs food. Because the land won't tend itself. And because deep down, somewhere under the sweat and sarcasm, there's something quietly noble in coaxing life from stubborn soil. So you dig. You weed. You hope. You call your rock Rockwell and try not to weep when you find him again next week. And as the sun finally begins to slip, giving the sky that soft, fading gold, you stretch your aching limbs and wonder what tomorrow will bring. You wake the next morning to the sound of bells, not the pleasant jingle of wind chimes or the gentle ring of a cozy clock, but the loud, clanging summons of the village church bell, a sound so shrill it could probably wake the dead, which you silently suspect is the point. Time for Mass. Again. You groan, rub your eyes with hands still crusted in yesterday's soil, and pull yourself upright. Church is not optional. It's the heartbeat of the village, the weekly rhythm that anchors life between fieldwork, harvests, and the occasional plague. Besides, the priest knows exactly who shows up and who doesn't. And you really don't want to end up in one of his fire and brimstone sermons next Sunday. You shuffle into your best tunic, which is just your least muddy tunic, and head out. The church is small, built of uneven stones and stubborn wood, with a steeple that leans a little more each year. You think of it as the village's unofficial weather vane. When the steeple points due east, you know a storm's coming. Inside, the air is thick with candle smoke and reverence. The priest begins the Latin Mass, which you do not understand even a little, but you know when to stand, when to kneel, and when to try not to yawn so obviously that he throws a psalm at your head. Faith is woven into everything. You cross yourself before planting, mutter prayers when lightning strikes, and invoke saints when your bread won't rise. There's a patron saint for just about everything. Saint Isidore for farmers, Saint Blaise for sore throats, and Saint Lawrence, who was, according to legend, grilled alive and told his executioners to flip him over because he was done on one side. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry at that one. Quirky fact, in some villages, people believed that if a chicken crowed at the wrong time, it meant the devil was nearby. You once spent an entire day side-eyeing your neighbor's hen after it clucked at sunset. Religion isn't just ritual, it's explanation. Why did the crops fail? God's punishment. Why did the baby get sick? God's will. Why did the roof cave in? Probably your sins. You cling to these explanations because the alternative, that life is just a chaotic mess of accidents and weather, is somehow scarier. Still, you find comfort in the pageantry, the incense, the chants, the flickering candles. They're a break from dirt and sweat, a moment to sit in a wooden pew and pretend you're part of something bigger than your aching back and empty stomach. The village calendar is ruled by holy days. Some are joyful, like Easter or Christmas, days of feasting, singing, and community mischief. Others are solemn, like Lent or All Souls' Day. And let's not forget saints' feast days, which offer more reasons to eat, drink, and bless things with holy water. You once saw a priest bless a cow, a wagon wheel, and a child's wooden spoon, all in one go. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were deeply devout or simply going through the motions out of obligation and fear. You suspect it's both. You believe because you must, but also because, on some quiet nights, when the stars are particularly clear, it feels true. Of course, the church is not just about prayer, it's also about power. The priest may live modestly, but he carries influence. He reads, he writes, he knows the Bible front to back. And in a world where most peasants are illiterate, that makes him as close to a wizard as you're likely to meet. Sometimes, you're summoned to confession and you list your sins: lying, laziness, swearing at the oxen again. The priest nods, mumbles absolution, and gives you penance, usually a string of prayers or a small task. One time, he told you to fast for a day. You told him you were already doing that accidentally. Tithes are another part of it. You owe the church a tenth of your harvest, even if the harvest barely feeds your family. You grumble, but you pay. Everyone does. It's the medieval version of a subscription service. Only this one promises eternal salvation instead of weekly discounts and cat videos. Still, there are moments of real beauty. Baptisms, where tiny babies are dunked in freezing water and promptly begin screaming in Latin. Weddings, where garlands are worn, ale flows, and someone always falls into a ditch. And funerals, where chants rise into the smoky sky and you whisper farewells into the wind. As evening falls, you light a small candle at home. It's not just for light, it's for protection. Evil spirits, it's said, fear flame. You whisper a prayer to St. Cuthbert because someone once told you he watches over tired backs and stubborn fields. You're not sure if that's true, but it can't hurt. You lay down, muscles sore, heart heavy, and hope that the saints are listening. Time slows now. The outside world fades. Just the soft crackle of the fire, the whisper of wind against wood, the murmur of someone's sleepy breath. Your limbs grow heavy. Thoughts drift like falling leaves. Your eyes begin to close, and you rest. Wind down begins here. Let the earth beneath you soften. The air has cooled. The candlelight flickers faintly, and the whisper of night wraps around you like a woolen cloak. You've done your work today. The fields are quiet. The tools are hung. The bread is baked. The prayers are said, and the church bell has long since gone silent. There is nothing else you need to do now. No lords to serve, no rocks to lift, just the hush of a sleeping village and the lull of your own breath. You're safe. You're warm. The world, as harsh and wild as it can be, has given you a brief reprieve, a pocket of peace carved gently into the middle of this hard life. Let your mind wander through candlelit chapels, sun-drenched fields, soft moss under your bare feet. Let the sounds of goats, wind, and laughter echo far away, fading into something dreamlike, distant, harmless. You are here. You are enough. You are resting. The past is past. Tomorrow will come. But for now, let the stars stand watch above your roof, and the embers glow softly beside you. Breathe slowly. Let your eyes close, and sleep.